it's been a good solid month or so, but I think we feel refreshed.
Yes.
Tim, we've both been traveling.
Yeah, a little traveling, a little safe.
Good
traveling.
Yeah.
Tell me about international travel. What's the situation? What do you have to do to get the hell out of this?
It was pretty great. We bounced over to Paris, my first actual vacation overseas trip in more than a decade. Incredible to say. It's good. Our daughter's old enough now to travel. Still a lot of complaining, but that's what you get with kids. But she's old enough to travel and to appreciate it, and so it's not
long 6-7 hour.
Yeah, the long flights.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was good. France largely opened up middle of June. Eiffel Tower and the museums and everything was sort of back full. And they didn't go into this sanitary passport thing that's causing so much fuss until about August 1st was the day. So we left before that. So we were there during a really good period when everything was bouncing, and it was great. Getting there was not a problem. You wear your mask on the plane.
Yeah.
Obviously, and that is pretty rigidly enforced by some very, very scary flight attendants. Man, I'll tell you, this one lady, I do not want to mess with her. So there's that. It's a little annoying, but if you sleep on the plane, you don't pay much attention to it.
Yeah.
And then once you're there, it's it was fine. It's like Paris as usual. Masking inside department stores and inside stores, but on the sidewalk and everything else. We were there for Bastille Day, the end of the Tour de France. It was great. It was great. And restaurants are hopping and people are having dance parties. I mean, this was the great thing. We wanted our daughter to sort of enjoy the boat ride on the Seine. So we did one of those, which to me is usually one of those touristy things. Like the LA equivalent of that to me is getting on one of those dumb buses in Hollywood.
Oh yeah.
Right? Okay, that have no top on them. Like you'd have to put a gun to my head to get me to do one of those things. However, with an 8-year-old in Paris, it's like, okay, we'll do one of these.
Yeah.
So, but going by on that particular day, there had to be like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people on the banks of the Seine, right opposite Notre Dame, having 3 different dance parties.
Wow.
And it was amazing. There were like a bunch of kids at one. It was kind of a break dancing thing, and then right next to it was a salsa dancing thing. And then right next to that was kind of a more ballroom dancing thing. And you could tell it was an age progression, right? But they were all there at the same time, and it was clearly organized, and it was just a lot of people. And it was really good. It was nice. It was Paris, So coming back, we had to transition through Germany. So we had to do this remote COVID testing thing, which I recommend to anybody, by the way. You get like you buy it online, they send it to you, you bring the kit with you, and then you log on, you create an account, you log on, and then some person on the other end will say, okay, hold this up to the camera, and you swab your nose, you stick it in the little hole, and if the 2 lines show up, you're good. If only 1 line shows up, you're not, or whatever. Maybe it's the inverse, I forget. And then you show that up to the camera, and then they basically shoot a QR code over into your account. And then you got that great QR code on your phone. And then when you get to the Lufthansa counter, you show them the QR code and they say, yeah, we're not set up to read that yet. Do you have any paperwork printed out? and you go, I went through all that for you to ask me for paperwork. Where am I going to get a printer? I mean, seriously, I got a printer. I was just in an Airbnb where that doesn't come with a printer. What do you expect? Seriously? Anyway, apart from that glitch, everything was fine.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But look, you got in there, a nice little tight window. You got in, you enjoyed the opening up of Paris, got back. Me, I just went to see my mother in St. Louis. And in the state of Missouri,
hey,
which is perfectly
good.
Ridiculous. But, my mother, I just wanted to see my mom. So I was all good. Mostly hung out at her house. So
fantastic. It's home, man. There's a lot to be said for that. We did not, let me just say that in the time that we were in Paris, I did not relax once.
Yeah.
We were walking between 6 and 10 miles a day.
Oh, man.
A day.
Considering the food in Paris, though, that's probably good.
Yeah, because you know what? I did not lose a single ounce. I didn't. I didn't. Whatever I walked off, I made up in cream and cheese. So there we go. That's how it was. But it was good. And you know, there, and I told you this separately, but I'll say this for the listeners as well. There was something very, very revelatory in going through that part of the Musée d'Orsay where all the Impressionists, the Impressionist wing, where you have your Monet and your Manet and Renoir and Van Gogh and Cézanne and all of them. They're all thrown together. You know, Toulouse-Lautrec, who couldn't stop painting portraits of prostitutes to save his life. They're all there in one particular wing, and it's emotionally really overwhelming just to see it all one after another. All these great paintings that just you otherwise have only ever seen in books. But there's also the story of the Impressionists.
Oh yeah,
and the story of the Impressionists is nobody took them seriously.
Yeah.
The salon that was, sort of that oversaw all of the exhibitions in Paris. If you wanted to be a painter, you had to be exhibited in the salon. Well, they just ignored them and wouldn't give them the time of day. And in the end, they all had to get together and exhibit their work on their own. They did it themselves. Yeah. And who remembers the work from the other guys that were exhibiting at the salon? Well, not many.
Well, look, the salon at that particular time, we're talking about near the turn of the last century is what we're talking about.
That's right.
Was still mostly about classical representational painting. Things that looked like what they were being painted. And looking at these people who were painting with dots and smudges and all this kind of stuff. What are you people doing? And that this term that we use now, impressionism, that didn't exist then. Of course, they weren't walking around calling themselves. It's our impression. No one was saying that then. That's a term of art that comes 25 years later. But it is a sort of fascinating thing, though. That when folks talk about, for instance, like modern art, folks talk about modern art and how they hate modern art, can't stand modern art. I have to remind them, there was a moment in time when folks were looking at that Morisot and Degas and all of that, and they hated it. They really hated it. So relax. Your grandkids are going to love this crap.
And the thing that occurred to me there was what a great metaphor. It isn't even a metaphor. It's an analogy. It's an analog. It's a predecessor even to what has happened before in the movie business. And to what probably needs to happen again, which is that, right now everyone is kind of complaining all over again about streaming. I mean, the one thing we should mention is Scarlett Johansson suing Disney.
Oh, yeah.
Which has gone south very hard. I mean, you would think that Disney would be a little more circumspect about, but then they turned right around and badmouthed her and said, oh, she has no sympathy for people during a pandemic and she's so rich. It's like, well, as a producer interviewed by the Hollywood Reporter said, look, that money is either going to the town or it's going to the studio. I mean, it's going somewhere. So
no one suffering from the pandemic is going to get one of those bucks. That's not the issue.
Yeah. No. So if you're like, oh, she's so greedy. Well, what do you say about the studio? Because if she doesn't get it, the studio is just going to get even more of it. I mean, somebody is going to get massively wealthy off of this. So there's, like you said, nobody who's unemployed during the pandemic is going to get that. So more lawsuits apparently are on the way. A lot of people are speculating that Emma Stone may be next, suing for what she lost off of the streaming debut of Cruella. But nonetheless, the point being that everyone is complaining now about streaming and losing money and not having creative freedom, and that my movies aren't getting into theaters, and they're not making these kinds of movies, and this kind of movie now has to become a series. And you're putting yourself at the mercy, basically, of the salon, right? It's the current day Hollywood structure is the Salon de Paris of 130, 40 years ago. Yeah. And maybe everybody needs to kind of do that UA thing all over again. That's how UA happened.
Yeah.
Was that Chaplin and Pickford and Fairbanks and Griffith got together and said, we're fed up with this. And maybe something comparable has to happen today. Maybe the people in Hollywood who are in a position to do so, who have the power, who have the names, maybe it's time for them to just say, shine it. We're going to band together and we're going to do our own thing and change it again. That we need that infusion every once in a while.
Yeah. And of course it's all incredibly complicated right now. The pandemic is in fact still the pandemic. How theatrical exhibition will manage itself. I get it. The movie theaters are back. People are going to the movies. You see those NATO ads on television and all of that stuff. But we cannot pretend like there aren't a group of people, a sector of people who are simply not ready to go do that right now.
It may take years.
Yeah, and in the meantime, we have all of these things that we never had before. All these streaming services, Jungle Book, Jungle Cruise.
Yeah,
what I think would help is some real serious transparency on the part of these companies regarding how much revenue is being brought in from streaming services. Right?
Oh yeah.
If I'm Scarlett Johansson and you tell me, look, Scarlett, movie theaters over here, we did this. This is what we brought in streaming on those $30 tickets. Your slice of that, in other words, if every one of those $30 subscriptions had been, whatever, I guess 2 ticket sales or something, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Your cut would have been, thus and such. All things being equal, we're going to give you a piece of every bit of the appropriate amount of viewership from your movie.
Yeah.
And so, so I don't know what's hard about that.
But nothing's hard about that. But you and I both know that the Wall Street bean counters who basically run the show, whose job, again, this gets into a bigger conversation that we've had many times, but their job is not to make us happy as film critics or to make audiences happy or to make talent happy. Their job is appreciation of stock value. Their job is to make shareholders happy.
Yeah.
And they resent talent for that, for how they interfere with that process and for taking money off the table. And they resent the theaters for that as well.
Yeah.
So they want to migrate everything away from theaters, away from talent deals, away from everybody who sort of chips away at shareholder value, at anything that might, because it's not even the money that they earn. It's being able to go on that quarterly call 4 times a year and say, we just saw earnings increase X%. And then the analysts in Wall Street say, oh, well, this is a buy. And then shareholders, see their value increase and they can sell and they can do what they always do. And all the rest of us kind of get caught out in the cold. So that's why there does have to be pushback from talent. But mark my words, you remember the last negotiation with the writers and the actors. That was all about streaming revenue. And that was whatever it was, 7-8 years ago. I can't remember the last time, but it went, they tabled it, right? The studios came and pleaded and said, we just don't know what streaming looks like. It's all kind of very embryonic now and we don't know where it's going and we don't want to commit ourselves. So let's just wait and see where this goes. And then we'll have that conversation down the line. They played that game. Well, we're there now.
Yeah.
We're there. And, it's to a place where when these contracts come back, there's going to be real pushback.
Yeah.
The Directors Guild, the Screen Actors Guild, the Writers Guild, they're done playing this game. They want their piece of the pie.
Yeah.
And they're going to get it.
Yeah, and it's a real big pie.
And there may be some strikes. We may be in for a prolonged 6, 7, 8 month strike at some point.
And of course, the previous disturbance that we just experienced with writers and agencies and breaking all of that apart is going to play a big part in all of that. Because talent will have a little bit more leverage now than they had before. Because for one thing, it will behoove agencies to actually lobby for their talent.
That's right. And that's a great point because the agencies now, because the WGA pushed them, the agencies now are backing out of the packaging business. So they are now more invested than they ever were before in the 10% business.
Yeah. Don't worry, baby. I'm going to get you every cent you got coming because that's going to be more money I got coming.
That's right. So now that it's all that much more important that they actually get those big profit sharing deals. And, I think the studios and the streamers are screwed. I think they have a very rude awakening coming. They're their gold mine period, their gold rush period with Disney Plus and HBO Max and all of these, being able to sort of say, we're going to push our movies there. And we don't owe you any money. We don't owe the theaters any money. We're going to see if we can, kind of bolster it. I think that's a very narrow window, and that game is going to go south very quickly.
Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, you can't keep kicking talent in the balls because eventually there's a talent. Just pay them their money, man. But we'll see how that all goes.
Yep. We will indeed.
All right.
Well, let's get going here. A lot of stuff is racked up over the past few weeks. So I want to plow through a bunch of stuff from Warner Archives.
Yeah.
The Warner Archive collection continues to be one of the great gems out there in the manufacture on demand area of Blu-ray. It is all on Blu-ray now, by the way. Warner Archive collection no longer releases DVD manufacture on demand titles, MOD titles. It is all Blu-ray. And what an amazing bunch of titles. This is what you got to choose from. A bunch of old noirs and thrillers here. These are all worthwhile. Crossfire is an absolute classic. Robert Young, Robert Mitchum, Robert Ryan, and the wonderful Gloria Graham, of course. This is just a fantastic, fabulous noir, a great Robert Mitchum noir. As Tim knows, I've been immersed in a lot of Robert Mitchum noir in the last few months, for reasons I will divulge at a future date. But this is really just absolutely terrific. Robert Mitchum is just such a great hard-boiled guy, and
out of the past.
This is a very, very fun film, scripted by John Paxton. It has a commentary by film historians Alan Silver and James Orsini on it. Really, really good stuff. We've also got James Cagney and George Raft in Each Dawn I Die, which is also loaded with special features, all kinds of vintage stuff from 1939, Warner Night at the Movies, shorts, and all kinds of fun stuff, featurettes. Really, really great stuff. There's a fun little classic cartoon on here that was Oscar nominated as well. Cagney and Raft just doesn't get better. They Won't Believe Me with Robert Young and Susan Hayward. Susan Hayward, I always forget what an amazing, great femme fatale she was.
Oh, man.
Susan Hayward's just absolutely pitch perfect. Not a lot by way of extras on here. This was an RKO film originally. It came into the Warner Library. Bogart and Eleanor Parker. We always forget about Eleanor Parker. She's another one that kind of went away. In Chain Lightning. Not the sort of epic Bogart that we're often accustomed to, but still super, super great. This is a little bit more of a drama than a noir. It's a World War II and pilot melodrama, but it's Bogart, so it kind of lives in the noir realm a little bit. It's noir adjacent, I would say. Lawrence Tierney and Ann Jeffries in Step by Step, which is sort of a kind of a minor noir figure. This is also an RKO film. This has this really cool short on it, which is almost worth the price of the purchase alone. And by the way, Lawrence Tierney and Ann Jeffries previously starred in Dillinger. This was a film that kind of reunited them together. It's basically an espionage film. It's fine. It's fine. It's not brilliant, but it has this really, really cool short on here, the Transatlantic Mystery, which is really pretty awesome. I'd never seen it before. And then they have the Great Piggy Bank Robbery as an animated short. And the last of the noir bunch is I Wouldn't Be in Your Shoes with Don Castle and Elise Knox. Love these titles. I Wouldn't Be in Your Shoes. This is a minor noir, but a really, really, really good one. This was one of the earliest films produced by Walter Mirisch of the Mirisch brothers, who would, of course, go on to do all the Pink Panther movies and a lot of Blake Edwards stuff, some Billy Wilder stuff. I mean, and by the way, Walter Mirisch, we should point out, is still alive.
Oh, yeah.
He's like 97 years old, still goes into the office every day on the Universal lot, coat and tie, goes to his office, still has his production deal with them.
Yeah.
I'm sure it doesn't cost them a lot to pay for that office, but you're not gonna cut the Walter Mirisch off at the knees. So anyway, they started with Monogram in the late 40s, and this was a Walter Mirisch production, and it's based on a novel by Cornell Woolrich. It's a good, solid classic noir. with some very, very decent actors. And they restored this from the original nitrate elements. So it is absolutely pristine. If you can see this on a great, great system, you do yourself a favor and by all means do it. We've also got some, let me dip in here, got a few Westerns.
No.
There was A Crooked Man with Henry Fonda and Kirk Douglas.
Yeah.
Also, Burgess Meredith, Warren Oates, Hume Cronin. Here's the thing about Burgess Meredith. A friend of mine used to, actually, no, you know who it was? It was Mark Kaiser.
Oh, Mark
Kaiser. I was thinking of somebody else that I knew who knew Burgess Meredith, but no, it was Mark Kaiser who used to say, Burgess Meredith has been 80 years old for 70 years.
He looks exactly the same, whether you're watching him in that Twilight Zone where his glasses get broken.
Yeah, that's right.
Or which is like, I don't know, probably the early 60s. And then 25 years later, he's running around behind Sylvester Stallone and Rocky. Looks exactly the same. And just forever, no matter where you go, Burgess Meredith looks exactly the same.
Yeah, well, this is a Joseph Mankiewicz movie that is a great kind of Western noir. It's great. You got the MacGuffin here is $500,000 in loot, and you've got a crook who's going to try to recover it, and then you've got a prison warden who thinks that he's on top of it as well, and a lot of really, really fun stuff in this thing. It's a good, solid, kind of a late Joseph Mankiewicz movie. There was A Crooked Man. Yeah. And then we also have a little older, more traditional Western, Escape from Fort Bravo, with a very young William Holden. This was an MGM melodrama, kind of a Western melodrama. William Holden and Eleanor Parker. There's some good supporting performances here. Polly Bergen is absolutely terrific. And then Guns for San Sebastian with Charles Bronson and Anthony Quinn is absolutely a whole load of fun. Charles Bronson, people forget that guy had a body on him.
Oh man,
not to be believed.
Insane, just born that way.
Unreal, absolutely unreal. We always think, my Charles Bronson was the guy who was already, aging out, making all the schlocky knockoff gun movies in the 80s for Canon, and it was Death Wish 4, 5, 6, and 7, and all that stuff. But when you go back to the 60s in particular,
oh yeah,
what
was that series that he did, Man with a Camera or something like that? Real young. This is like probably mid-20s, early 30s Charles Bronson. In that series, stuff. Kind of like a Naked Gun kind of series that he was in. And just absolutely nuts and scary as hell even then.
Well, this has a little bit of the Man Who Would Be King in it. Anthony Quinn is running from the Mexican army, winds up in a small little village where everybody kind of takes him to be this messianic figure. And then you get then it kind of turns into a. It turns into a little bit like, oh God, what's that Nick Nolte movie? And Play in the Fields of the Lord a little bit. There's a little bit of that anyway. But there's a lot of Man Who Would Be King in here too, and it's very, very well put together. I really, really enjoy this film, directed by Henry Verneuil, director that we otherwise don't really remember much. A bunch of musicals too. I know Elvis movies, people don't typically consider them musicals. They're sort of like Elvis movies, in which Elvis sings some songs. And that doesn't really. It's not quite the same, but It Happened at the World's Fair is still a lot of fun. That's on Blu-ray now. We can get that with Gary Lockwood from 2001 and Star Trek showing up in a supporting role, directed by Norman Taurog, who, of course, did a lot of great Jerry Lewis stuff, too. Broadway Melody of 1940 with Fred Astaire and Eleanor Powell. Priceless, absolutely priceless. The Broadway Melody movies were kind of like what Gold Diggers was for Warner Brothers. The Broadway Melody films were for MGM. They just made a ton of them, and then sticking Fred Astaire in there by 1940 was great. Oh, by the way, one of the earliest Best Picture winners was the original Broadway Melody. Yeah. Annie Get Your Gun with Howard Keel and Betty Hutton. Betty Hutton is just absolutely terrific here as this great Broadway adaptation, with the Irving Berlin songs, and it's just absolutely terrific. Whole lot of fun. Betty Hutton, so good. I forget. I think it was just the one Judy Garland was originally supposed to be in.
Was that the one?
I think it was actually. I forget the one that Judy Garland was fired from. I think it was. Anyway, directed by George Sidney. Pretty great. Athena is a lesser-known musical with Jane Powell and Debbie Reynolds and Vic Damone. A guy named Edmund Purdom also shows up in this. I don't remember Edmund Purdom at all, but apparently he was a thing at the time. But this is another fun MGM musical. Debbie Reynolds is the real reason to watch this. Jane Powell is great, but Debbie Reynolds just amazing in everything she does. MGM's beautiful, beautiful Technicolor Ziegfeld Follies was a huge. I mean, if you're going to make a movie about Ziegfeld, you got to compete with Ziegfeld. Yeah. And this was just an amazing Vincent Minnelli directed, complete blow up. It was just, it's great in every conceivable way. It does justice to the material. Everybody is in this thing. Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly, Lucille Ball, Judy Garland, Lena Horne, Red Skelton, Esther Williams, Fanny Bryce. It's amazing. Like, everyone shows up in this thing. They went to town. It's beautiful. It's one of Vincent Minnelli's most entertaining films. And then lastly, of all of the musicals, is the Busby Berkeley directed Take Me Out to the Ball Game. I, of course, have been very immersed in Busby Berkeley lately, as Tim also knows. Frank Sinatra, Esther Williams, Gene Kelly. Really a fascinating film in the period, because Gene Kelly and Busby Berkeley did not exactly get along with each other, but they did make more than one movie together. The story of this one is quite interesting, and you don't really get it here because there's no commentary, but Stanley Donen and Gene Kelly wrote the story, and were, of course, very close friends, would go on to direct Singing in the Rain together. And Donen was sort of Kelly's, backup guy, his mentor in many respects. Man, they hated Busby Berkeley. It just did not get along. Anyway, another classic one from the MGM period. It's Frank Sinatra's kind of forgotten a little bit in this one, but it's okay. It's okay. Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Fun film. Some more recent films from the Warner Archive collection that are worth mentioning really quickly is Quick Change with Bill Murray.
Oh, yeah.
Right, as the clown.
Oh, my God. One of my favorite scenes of Randy Quaid before he went nuts.
That's right.
The most exquisite Gina Davis. That movie.
It's great. Directed by Howard Franklin, who previously did the Public Eye, which my mother-in-law, by the way, was an extra in, but has is like almost a featured extra. There's a huge close-up of her as she kind of walks into, and then the camera pans over to Joe Pesci. She's I'll talk about it.
It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Yeah.
It's a thing. Quick Change. Howard Franklin. Why isn't that guy doing any movies anymore? That's great. Drop Dead Gorgeous with Kirstie Alley and Ellen Barkin and Kirsten Dunst and Denise Richards. What happened to this movie?
Oh man, I remember that movie.
It's crazy.
I remember that movie.
Yeah, it was a fun little comedy at the time. And they're all still around. They're all still with us, just not making movies.
Yeah. She's skinny again. She got skinny. She was skinny in that movie. Got fat. Got skinny. Got fat again. Got skinny again.
Yeah. And then we, of course, have the Barbet Schroeder directed Reversal of Fortune, which won an Academy Award for Jeremy Irons as Klaus von Bülow. The late Ron Silver, absolutely magnificent here. And it's funny now, at the time, I had no idea who Alan Dershowitz was. I didn't know. I was like, oh, interesting. I didn't follow the trial or anything. Now that Dershowitz is in front of our eyeballs 24/7, and thanks to the OJ trial and everything else, I mean, Dershowitz is everywhere now, and Ron Silver isn't. And you watch this and you kind of go, gosh, I love Ron Silver, but he's not acting anything like Alan Dershowitz
at all. Based on the true story, whether did or didn't von Bülow kill his wife, the heiress or whatever she was. Yeah. Interesting. You can never make a movie about that today.
No, you couldn't.
That would not be a feature film wherein somebody might get nominated for an Academy Award.
That would be a Showtime. Yeah, that'd be a Showtime movie.
At best, yeah. If not just a straight up Jerry Springer episode, but whatever.
Yeah, there we go. Christian Slater in Pump Up the Volume, which became kind of a cult movie at the time. This pirate radio concept. In the age of streaming and podcasts, it doesn't really mean anything anymore, does it?
No, yeah. But you're right. For a moment there, it was like this little happening thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. That's that's out on MOD as well. And I am elated to say, Tim, Drunken Master 2 on Blu-ray. I cannot celebrate this enough. Here's the thing. Drunken Master 2, the Jackie Chan, the sequel to his original 1970s era Drunken Master. It came, 16, 17 years after the fact, but
Early
it's
90s
amazing.
or something like that.
Early 90s.
Yeah.
It's early 90s. It's an amazing film. I mean, it is epic. It is fun. Jackie sings the theme song, which is hilarious. The music's great. Everything is great. But it's mostly famous because Jackie went to one of his predecessors, Lau Kar-leung, who was sort of the great Hong Kong movie star of the Shaw Brothers period with a great choreographer. I mean, Lau Kar-leung is just, and his brothers changed the landscape of martial arts films in Hong Kong. And Jackie put himself and Lau Kar-leung in the same movie. And they had conflicts because their entire philosophy of action filmmaking was not the same. Now, Lau Kar-leung directed the film, and Jackie had been directing, and so they had some creative clashes. But boy, what those clashes resulted in is some amazing fight stuff. It's just incredible. This is one of the best Jackie Chan films. It's one you absolutely have to see. It's finally on Blu-ray. The ending sometimes ticks a lot. Some people off. The ending is a little bit not PC, but it's a gag. It's a dumb Hong Kong, comedy gag, and there's a lot of those. Don't think about that. Focus on the film. It's on Blu-ray. It is absolutely beautiful. Warner did right by that.
Yeah.
And then the last few here, I'm just roll through real quickly. Madame Curie with Greer Garson and Walter Pidgeon. We've had a few Marie Curie movies in recent last couple of years. This is still the original and the best. This one haunts me to this day. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful tribute to an amazing historical figure. Lana Turner and MGM's Green Dolphin Street. Terrific melodrama. Really, really good. Cary Grant and Myrna Loy with a supporting turn by Melvin Douglas, and Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House. This has shown up in a bunch of Cary Grant box sets on DVD, now out exclusively as a standalone on Blu-ray. They're slowly putting out all the Thin Man films on Blu-ray. The first Thin Man previously released. Now we have another Thin Man with William Powell and Myrna Loy, another Thin Man.
William Powell was still bumming around Beverly Hills when I first got here in the early 90s.
Really?
Yeah, I'd see him every now and again.
That's great.
It was great. Love William Powell.
He
lived to be like 95 or something, though, so,
It's just so we don't have actors anymore that are so gifted with just spitting out dialogue.
Yeah.
Just blam. Just let it flip. Just that's a 30s and 40s thing.
Technically, in all those movies, Powell, he was playing a cop. He was a cop, a detective. Yeah. But if you didn't know he was a cop, you'd never know he was a cop. But it was so funny.
Betty Davis and Errol Flynn in The Private Lives of Elizabeth and Essex, a Queen Elizabeth I period film that still resonates. Betty Davis playing a lot older than she was at the time, but, Davis and Errol Flynn, come on. Frank Sinatra and Debbie Reynolds hold it down with Celeste Holm in The Tender Trap. For some reason, David Wayne also shows up in here because his last name is Wayne. David Wayne, I love David Wayne, but I'm sorry, he's just not a very good actor. Nonetheless, The Tender Trap, nice classic CinemaScope Technicolor MGM movie. Dr. X.
Yeah, those sort of mid '50s movies. They still have this look to this richness.
I love it,
and it really comes through in Blu-ray, much more than it did. Certainly when you watch them on TV. These movies don't look on Blu-ray. They don't look anything like they look as you've been watching them broadcast on television on any of the places where they pop up. They don't look anything like that. These movies are rich and lustrous and really just beautiful, beautiful films.
Yep, they are. I just love the look. I love it. A nice Michael Curtiz directed first national thriller, Dr. X. Kind of, again, not the greatest film from the Michael Curtiz body of work, but this has been beautifully restored by the UCLA Film Archives, has a whole bunch of great extras on it. And it also has a separately filmed black and white version. Really, really a nice collection of materials on this one, Dr. X. Errol Flynn shows up again in Objective Burma, just basically a kind of a standard World War II programmer, but that's fine. You know, we needed some of those at the time, holding down the war effort. The Yearling, which my wife absolutely despises, Gregory Peck and Jane Wyman. It's, it's saccharine, it's sappy, it's like the original Bambi. What are you going to do?
I wouldn't show that. I wouldn't show that to my kid. I wouldn't show it to my kid. You gotta wait until somebody's about 15 and emotional. You can't be showing that to little kids. Freak them the hell out. Like Bambi. Why the hell would you show Bambi? No,
I don't know. Gonna kill a mom. We have not shown my daughter. We have not shown my daughter Bambi. And look, my daughter does definitely. She's very aware of the fact, after having watched all of the various princess movies 1,000 times, that there are no moms in these movies. Yeah. The moms all die. Yeah. All die. And in the case of Frozen, both parents die. Yeah. So, then we got Bob Hope and Lana Turner in Bachelor in Paradise. I don't know who thought that it was a great idea to pair Bob Hope with Lana Turner, but
Bob Hope thought it. That's who thought
it. That's right. It's a fun pairing. It really, really is. It's a later Bob Hope movie, but I'll tell you, it's great because Hal Cantor, the great Hal Cantor, co-wrote the script, and what an amazing comedy writer he was. Agnes Moorehead is lovely, and a supporting turn here too. And I'll tell you my Hal Cantor story here in a second before we move on. And then real quickly, last two, Boris Karloff in Isle of the Dead. It's just, it's a ridiculous, spooky film that, made for RKO in about 18 seconds. This is an early 40s thing. It doesn't really warrant much discussion, but it's got Boris Karloff, so there it is. And then lastly, I mention this only because some people are fond of this. I am not. I think this is an absolutely terrible film. But The Bermuda Depths was a live-action film that was an attempt by Arthur Rankin and Jules Bass, who, of course, did all of our little animated holiday specials and whatnot. They need to stick with Santa Claus is Coming to Town and Frosty the Snowman and all that stuff, because when they tried to do live action, it just did not work. But nonetheless, you got to give them credit for sort of wanting to stretch a little bit. It's not a good film, but it's got an audio commentary on it, and there it is, The Bermuda Depths. It's kind of terrible. So real quickly, my Hal Cantor story. Yeah. I went to years and years and years ago. There was a comedy writers. Well, it was generally a writers thing that they had at the Lowe's Hotel in Santa Monica. I can't remember if it was Writers Guild sponsored or not, but it was Writers on Writing. It was a nice little sort of convention and a lot of good panels. And there was a comedy panel that had Hal Cantor on it, and it also had Norm Macdonald on it. I don't even remember who else was on that panel. It was a lot of very, very distinguished comedians and writers. But all I remember from that was that Hal Cantor was moderating, and he's a crusty old guy. And every time Hal would start to say something, Norm Macdonald would interrupt, and he just started kind of talking over him like this. And Norm was doing it. It didn't matter what Norm was saying. He was messing with him. And then Hal would go, so our next topic, and as soon as he would say our next topic, Norm would say, yeah, I know all about topics. Topics are fun. And he just started talking over him, just interrupting it, just to get on his nerves. And the audience was laughing so hard. And Norm knew it was funny. Norm knew that this was and this shows you the difference between old and comedy. And Hal did not find it funny. That was not funny to Hal. Hal at a certain point, Hal shot Norm a look that was like, if looks could kill, and Norm just grinned. He just sat there and smiled like, I got you, didn't I? It was just priceless. That's the only thing I remember from that panel. Only thing I remember. It was brilliant. It was genius. And Hal Cantor, of course, no longer with us.
Hal gone. Who's that? Was it? I think it was Alan Alda. If it bends, it's funny.
That's right. That's right.
It's not funny. What is that? From Crimes and Misdemeanors, baby?
I think that's Crimes and Misdemeanors. Yeah. If it bends, it's funny. If it breaks, it's not funny. Great stuff.
Norm bent it. That's funny.
All right. Where do we turn now, Tim? What's next?
Well, let's poke at some television. I suppose, right? You got a big old stack over there. The Complete Rugrats. which is insane to me. Rugrats has been around forever. There was a Rugrats movie. So what do we have here in the complete Rugrats collection? Is this all of the episodes to date, or does it include that movie from a few years ago?
No, this is the complete series.
Okay.
Boy, it's a beautiful box set. The complete series. Look, I'm not a huge fan of Rugrats, but I have to be nice to it because a very, very dear friend of mine from film school worked on it.
Did Hero ever watch them?
Not really.
No.
She doesn't kind of get it either. Like, it's been on a couple of times on Nick when she was watching things and younger, and just didn't respond to it. It's not her speed. She doesn't really like shows about kids per se. She likes the only little girl shows she likes is Peppa Pig and Sarah and Duck. Those are the only ones that she really responds to. But this is good for some kids. It is a complete series. It's a nice big Nickelodeon box set in a single keep case. Everything is in one great big giant keep case. So don't damage it because you'll have a hard time finding a replacement case for this thing. But yeah, it's 26 discs, 9 seasons. I didn't even realize this show ran that long. That's I know, right?
These things have been around for a minute. That our cartoon president season 3. Interesting that they seem to have made the pivot from the previous administration to the new administration. Season 3, though, is that still while Donald was president? So,
yeah, it is. It is indeed. It's the tagline on it is "Who will be the next." So they obviously are trying to get ahead of themselves, and there's a lot of election related stuff in here. It's cute.
You know what I liked about cartoon? Because I ignored it for the whole first season because I didn't feel like watching a bunch of cartoons poking holes in Donald Trump. But when I finally did come to it and watch a few episodes, and I realized it didn't really have much to do with him at all, and that everybody is skewered, and that the reporters, everyone, no one's off the hook. So Joe Biden is not going to do any better than Donald did. And no.
It's the whole circus. It's the political circus that they're really skewering. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's a cute show.
And I like that much better.
I'm kind of warming to it as well, but. Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's still not funny, but I like that. But I like that about it. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, Showtime, Your Honor. Yeah,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, Your Honor on Showtime with Bryan Cranston, who continues to be just an absolutely superb actor. Although I kind of feel like he hasn't yet gained his full post Breaking Bad footing. He's still the guy from Breaking Bad who's doing good work. I think he's still shadowed by Breaking Bad to a very significant degree. But nonetheless, this is a 10-episode legal thriller that got a lot of attention, a lot of respect. Cranston plays a judge with whose son has legal troubles, and that creates a whole family situation that reverberates out into the community. Real solid, real solid. But Cranston I think he still needs that gig to get him, out from under the Breaking Bad thing.
Yeah. His Dark Materials, which is the series that I want McAvoy and a few others. You know what I love about these series? For one, they're sort of little girl centric. At the center of that series and so many of these other series, it's generally speaking a little girl or a young woman, however you want to shape it. This one is too. It's sort of fantastical, and it was sort of interesting. Lin-Manuel Miranda shows up, I think, in that second season. Is that what you have there? The second season of his Dark Materials?
That is correct. It is. This is the complete second season, Blu-ray and digital copy.
You know what I like about that? I forget the name of the guy who created that series, but it's not terribly old. He started writing though. He was a junior high teacher, and he started,
no kidding.
Yeah, and he started writing that series like in the 80s. And just create that entire. It's not one. It's not like one of these things from the 60s or 50s or 30s. Tolkien or something like that. He's just this guy who was a junior high teacher, and he kind of got into the stuff that the kids were into, and he thought, I think I could write a story that my junior high kids would like, and he would write them, and he would read them to his kids, and they loved them, and he just expanded them, and now he's, needless to say, not a junior high teacher anymore.
See, I love those stories. I mean, look, J.K. Rowling was homeless at one point, living in her car.
Yeah,
living in her car, and I love that. I love hearing those stories. Just keep on plugging away. Keep on plugging away.
So that's season 2.
That is season 2.
Paris and Recreation. Parks and Recreation. Is that the complete?
Yeah,
is that the complete series?
Yep. Yeah. Hold on. Good. So here's what they've done. They've given us a complete Parks and Recreation Blu-ray set. And it's really, I didn't expect this. I guess I never really appreciated that Parks and Rec was that popular.
To be honest with you, I've never seen a single. I know that some of the most important figures in pop culture has come out of Parks and Recreation. Childish Gambino, or what's his name, Donnell. All these people who've gone on to become movie stars and TV stars. Never seen a single episode of Parks and Recreation.
I've seen probably 10 episodes in broadcast, and with this set I watched maybe another 10 or 15, and it's funny. There's some funny stuff. I gotta get, Amy Poehler, you can't go wrong. Some of the guest spots on here are really, really great. This has given us like you said, a lot of great stars have come out of this thing, but it still has that quasi documentary thing that started with The Office,
where they kind of play to the camera a little bit.
It's still that whole stylistic signature is still very, very much a part of it. Now, Chris Pratt came out of here, so we got to give him that. He's a huge movie star now with Guardians of the Galaxy and Jurassic World, but it still has that, and I just don't. I don't know that I like it that much. But anyway,
for the same reason, I was never particularly fond of either one of the Office as I say, the offices. It's that thing, and I don't know what it is. Larry Sanders' show did it, of course. The Larry Sanders show. No, Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
That's the one.
That's right.
Which
and also American Family.
The one with the Arrested Development.
Modern Family. Sorry, Modern Family.
Modern Family.
Yeah.
Modern Family.
So they all kind of do that. But anyway, 7 seasons. It's a really, really nice set. And if you love the show, go for it. But you gotta like that particular approach.
Well, it threw some people at us. The Walking Dead season 10.
So, The Walking Dead complete 10th season is not the final season. The final season starts this month in August. It's going to be coming up soon. So we're nearing the end now, and that's basically it.
The Dead have been walking for quite a while now, and they walk in various different shows in various different cities. I think the other one said Los Angeles. If I'm not mistaken, there might even be a third one. So it's not like The Walking Dead will ever actually stop walking. And to be honest with you, I got to tell you, that's another one where I tapped out after about season 5. It can only work in a certain sort of way. These Walking Dead series, and they were interesting for a moment, but zombies did not stick with me as long as, I don't know, say vampires. Vampires hung around a little bit longer for me. I got tired of zombies.
Never been my thing.
Yeah, I got tired of zombies.
Yeah, it's never quite been my thing.
What is the Herculoids, the complete series?
Oh my gosh, dude, the Herculoids. Hold on.
Is that what I think it is? Because I used to love, if I'm not mistaken, the Herculoids.
That is exactly what you think it is, and that's part of the Warner Archive as well, which we touched on earlier, but it's TV, so we put it aside here. The Herculoids was the Hanna-Barbera series.
Okay.
That sort of He-Man-ish Stone Age thing with it's like a kind of a fantasy He-Man-ish superhero team. It had that little blob thing. It had that like Triceratops that would shoot things out of its horn. You remember that?
I love that series. It was this is mid-60s stuff we're talking about, right? Animation.
I think we're about 74 with this one.
So I guess they can't carry it. I remember the very early, Alex Toth created that series. And it was fantastic. I loved all that stuff. Don Messick and Virginia Gregg and all those guys. Yeah.
It's not bad. It's a little silly in hindsight. You're talking kind of like a cross between He-Man and the Fantastic Four and Johnny Quest. Hard to know, but you got the little blob creatures. What are they called? Gloop and Gleep.
Yeah.
Right. It was a fun idea. It didn't quite work out, but hey, why not? The Herculoid. So that's out in a complete series on Blu-ray from the Warner Archive collection as well. That is also MOD.
I bet you that it's just going to pop off the screen. I bet you just pops off the screen. That animation was insane back then. So primary colors to the wall.
Got a few National Geographic seasons that have been added in for some of these shows as well. Running Wild with Bear Grylls is now in season 6. Dr. Oakley Yukon Vet is in season 9. Heartland Docs DVM is in season 3. Life Below Zero Next Generation, which is really a good show. It's not about docs. That's in season 2. That's really worth checking out, I would say, by the way. If people haven't looked at this, this is about basically people, living off the grid in Alaska. And, man, you can be part of America and not really be part of America. You know what
hey, that's what makes it America.
And then the last one, still dealing with doctors, is a new show in its first season called The Wildlife of Dr. Ole. And Dr. Ole Alcumbrak is this guy who runs an animal hospital called White Mountain Animal Hospital in Arizona, and it's okay. I mean, any of us who've had pets or who have loved ones who've had pets, you've been to an animal hospital. They're not the greatest place in the world. It's kind of depressing.
Yeah.
But there's a way of making a show out of it, and they have done that. Yep. But of all of these, I got to say that Life Below Zero is great, and Running Wild with Bear Grylls, is still pretty interesting.
Now, yeah, that's all Nat Geo, right?
All Nat Geo.
All Nat Geo. That's Nat Geo. Yet Nat Geo is also the producers of Genius, Aretha, that Aretha Franklin, the young Aretha Franklin series. I'm still trying to get my mind around how some of these networks and whatnot have managed to metamorph themselves into. I don't know. It just never occurred to me to go watch the series about Aretha Franklin on Nat Geo. Cynthia Erivo was nominated for some Emmys. That's all. But nevertheless, I don't know. Nat Geo, do you have that one?
I got it right here. Season 3 of Genius. So what they do is that each of these shows, they pick a different person to sort of biographize. Is that a word?
It is now, baby.
Yeah, it is now. All right. So they give a different dramatic treatment to a different historical figure of genius in each season. And season 3 is Aretha Franklin. What's going to be really interesting, and Cynthia is very good here. I mean, she is very good. Let's take nothing from her. She's an Oscar-nominated actress. She's extremely talented. She's a wonderful singer. She looks a great deal like Aretha Franklin. Yeah. Probably more than Jennifer Hudson does. But Jennifer Hudson, the bigger movie star, and that forthcoming movie, Respect, which is coming out within, I think, a month or so.
Yeah.
That's going to be very interesting. How does this compare with that? I'm really curious. I'm really looking forward to Respect. I think the trailer is tremendous, and obviously it has a bigger budget, but this has more time. This really, really stretched it out across a season, so really blankets her life. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see. Jennifer Hudson versus Cynthia Erivo.
Yeah, the Courtney P. Vance, who's playing the Reverend C.L. Franklin in that one that you have there. He also nominated, if I'm not mistaken, for an Emmy.
Yes, correct.
So Oscars versus Emmys. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how those things sort of play out and matter in the world. As they do. Of course, Jennifer Hudson was tapped specifically and directly by Aretha before she passed. They were good friends, Jennifer Hudson and Aretha Franklin, to play her eventually. That's a thing. A series that I started off watching early on, and it's released as Shameless. Now we're up to season 11. I think you got season 11 there of Shameless. To be honest with you, I didn't know that series was still on. Or maybe it's not. Maybe is that the end of the?
This is the end of it. The 11th season is the last one. It did indeed tap out at 11, and I will confess I just never really got this. I tried to watch a few episodes. I tried to sort of get into the whole South Side family thing. It just and I can't quite tell you why it doesn't entirely work for me. Because I love William H. Macy. You know, I think they surrounded him with a very good cast. I think some of the writing is sharp, but I think part of my problem may be that I'm sort of, I've OD'd on dysfunctional family television where it's a little dramatic and it's a little comedic and we're supposed to laugh. And then, you know, there's been a lot of that. And I guess it just feels like I'm at my limit.
Oh, dude, I'm way out ahead of you on that. I wouldn't have liked that. Hey, look, I wouldn't like that guy if he lived next door to me. I wouldn't like him. I wouldn't like his sketchy kids. It's so. I wouldn't want to deal with their crap every day. So, and I get it. I get it. You have these sort of families, these people. They happen. I grew up with some of them. I know you grew up with one or two of them.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, even in my family, there are people who are adjacent to that kind of stuff. And you know what? I'm good. I'm good. Don't need to watch a TV show about this alcoholic every day.
All right, Tim.
Okay.
Tim, you are the Doctor Who man.
Oh yes.
We got 3 here.
Oh, outstanding.
we got 2 new ones from the Peter Davison years in the 1980s. The King's Demons and a special edition of The Visitation.
Yeah.
And then we have an old classic one from the Patrick. Is it Troughton or Troughton?
Troughton. I always call him Patrick Troughton.
Okay, Patrick Troughton.
I think the 3rd Doctor, if I'm not mistaken.
This is from 1966 to 1969, and this is a special edition of what I understand is a very famous Who adventure, The Tomb of the Cybermen.
Oh, and as a matter of fact, Patrick was the second
you're familiar
Doctor.
with, The Tomb of the Cybermen?
Absolutely, the Tomb of the Cybermen. It's the initiation of the Cybermen story, which goes on to this very day.
Oh,
he was the second Doctor because Tom Baker's the 4th Doctor, and that 3rd Doctor in there, the guy with the fluffy hair, and those are all fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Peter Davison, he was the one that was sort of like tennis outfit. I think it was the Doctor in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he was. It was 82 to 84, and very, very tennis outfit looking. Yes, he's got the pullover V-neck sweater and the hat, little straw hat. It's all the whole outfit is a little bit like trying too hard. You're like, you're just a little too casual there, dude.
After Tom Baker, with the scarves and the fedoras, everybody.
That's right. That's right. Baker was the guy who really kind of introduced a fashion sense, wasn't he?
Dude, I wore those long scarves for years. After watching that. Yeah, so those are great. Fantastic. Some Doctor Who's from across the century there. What is American Gods? That was that series. That was literally that. That lasted 3 seasons?
American Gods, this is season 3 from Stars. And this was based on Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
Or Gaiman. How do you pronounce
Gaiman? That's what I always said. I always said Gaiman.
Yeah. So this is based on his work, and it's an interesting idea. It kind of tries to bridge us across the superhero religious divide to the idea that there are these supernatural figures that may actually be real. They are, sort of our real life superheroes. It's sort of a jump, it's a little bit of a science fiction conceit, but it sort of works. They introduce new characters in season 3, and it still feels like it's trying to find its footing, and I'm not sure this show ever gets its footing. I'm not sure there is a season 4. Did this thing get canceled? Do you know?
I don't know if they got canceled or not. I don't even.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I mean, some good performances here. I think a lot of these characters, the actors that we're less familiar with, will obviously go on and have more substantial careers. I don't. I'm very familiar with Norse mythology. I was very much into it as a kid. I was into all the mythologies. I learned Egyptian and Norse and Greco-Roman and all that stuff, and certainly studied up a little bit on some other Middle Eastern mythologies. And I kind of understand where Gaiman is coming from, what he's trying to do, but it also feels a little tiny bit I don't know, simplified in some sense. It's fine. It's fine. All right. Tim, did you ever watch The Critic?
Oh yeah, I love The Critic. The little squiggle vision. Very clever.
Does it reflect what we've gone through for far too long a period of our lives? I mean, I think John Lovitz doing the voice of the critic absolutely captures a certain kind of critic that we know.
Yeah, absolutely. Who was that? Who was that guy that worked at Entertainment Today when we were there 30 years ago?
Sam Frank.
Yeah, and his brother too, who's actually wandered around this town pretending to be me.
I remember that.
It was just bizarre, considering he was a small Jewish man and I was a small black man, and I'm like, we're both kind of Jewish, but Frank, I forget what his brother's name was. I don't know what his brother's name.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
But how he could actually get into movies pretending to be me was always fascinating. I never ratted him out. I let him, you go knock yourself out with it, right? If you can get past the folks, do it.
Well,
they're the critic.
It definitely there is a dash of Sam Frank in here and a lot, a little bit of Ebert and a few things. Yeah.
Oh, a little bit of me too. I'm not even gonna pretend. Yeah. But it's a fun series. It's a fun little series there.
It was short lived, but it was a fun series. That's out from Mill Creek. Pennyworth. Have you been watching Pennyworth?
I did watch a couple of seasons of Pennyworth. Pennyworth, of course, going on to become the valet, the man. For Batman, Alfred Pennyworth. The Pennyworth storyline for me is most interesting in the Gotham series, which was about young Batman, little boy Bruce Wayne, and Alfred, who's the Pennyworth in there. Alfred was played by the third Doctor's son, which is a weird thing that I know. That I don't know why I know that. But nevertheless, that's who played him. And I love the way Alfred was played by him, this sort of Cockney, badass street brawler fighter guy, special forces and all of that. That's kind of the backstory for this Pennyworth guy, who's even younger. The dates don't make any sense. Alfred would have to be 150 years old at this point, but whatever. At least they kind of got the nature of the guy a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting thing to suggest that before Alfred was Batman's butler, he was basically Steed from the Avengers.
Yeah.
That's kind of sort of what this is trying to do. I thought the premise was ridiculous, but by season 2 here, and this is what we have is the complete second season on Blu-ray of Pennyworth. I think they're kind of getting their footing, and what they're doing is they're letting go of all of the Gotham mythology and just saying, you know what, it's Alfred, but we really don't need to worry about it. But we're just going to let this show be this show.
Yeah, because all that other crap is in the future anyway. And
it's too much baggage.
Most of this show takes place in the UK. And he can just be this spy, and they can figure out how to get him hooked up with Batman or Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne. Well, Bruce Wayne's father plays a role in this Pennyworth series.
Yeah,
all kinds of stuff that's going on.
But they're letting go of the baggage a little bit in the second season, and I think that's a smart thing to do. Want to make mention of Drunk History here, a show that I just completely don't understand in any way whatsoever. But I just know this is Comedy Central. This thing ran for 6 seasons. I do not understand how you squeeze 6 seasons out of this. Perhaps because Derek Waters is such a good host. He's an engaging figure, so you can do whatever. But I don't know, man. This was a strange show, and I don't, you have a lot of great comedians on the show and some whatever, but I don't know. The stories just kind of run thin at a certain point. It's not all as funny as they seem to think that it is. They got some good guests. Again, Tiffany Haddish and Bill Hader and a lot of people. Will Ferrell produced this with Adam McKay. That's probably the only reason that they got it off the ground was because Will Ferrell and Adam McKay walked in and said, a show called Drunk History. Greenlit.
I don't look. Anyway. The only drunk sort of circumstance. Same thing going back to that show, that series, Shameless. that I ever found particularly funny and engaging in a consistent way is when what was his name? Foster, I want to say Foster Brooks. He's this guy, comedian, back in the 60s and 70s. And his entire act was being drunk. Being drunk on the Johnny Carson show, being drunk on the variety show.
Dean Martin. Dean Martin with Dean Martin were amazing.
With the martini and all that kind of stuff. And that was his whole bit. His whole act was whatever he was doing, he was drunk while he was doing it.
Yeah.
And that's the only time I've ever found it funny. John Pertwee and Sean Pertwee.
Yes, there we go.
That's who I'm thinking of. John Pertwee was the third Doctor, and Sean Pertwee played Pennyworth.
It came to you. It kept working in the back of your head.
Yeah, whatever. As though anybody was thinking about it except me.
I just want to say those Foster Brooks bits on the Dean Martin show were so funny. If you haven't seen them, go onto YouTube and dig some up. They're all on there. Where every single one of them is the same. Dean Martin. By the way, not to detour too much from the show. This is how Dean Martin's show would go. Everybody on Dean Martin's show would rehearse. They would write and they would rehearse and do the hell out of the show all week long. And Dean was never there. Dean is doing whatever Dean is doing. And then Friday at like 4 p.m., Dean saunters in for dress rehearsal, and everything has to be on cue cards. Dean hasn't read a word of the show. He has no idea how the show is going to go. He just saunters in. Hello, everybody. All right, let's do this. Where do I go? And they sit him down, and he just reads cue cards. He has no clue. Every Dean Martin show is like this, and you can tell it's part of the charm of the show is that Dean. This is the first time he's seeing any of this stuff. He has no idea where this is going. And the Foster Brooks bits are very simple. Dean is sitting in a bar with a martini and a cigarette, and there's a guy on piano. He's playing piano, and Dean just sits there, and you can tell he's looking at the cue cards. And Foster just stumbles in and sits down at the bar next to him, and says, "How you doing?" And he starts doing his shtick. And the joke always is, "Oh, what do you do?" Oh, I'm a pilot. I'm a brain surgeon. Yeah. I'm, all these things, and I'm on my way to work. And Dean loses it. He can't handle it. He's practically in tears because Foster is just making him laugh so hard because he's never seen this before. It's the first time he's reading any of this stuff off the cue card. And Foster Brooks is improvising a lot of this stuff too. He's just winging a lot of these things, and it's so funny. It's just great live television.
It's what Dean knew that. Look, first of all, Dean Martin spent 20 years on a stage standing next to Jerry Lewis, and you never knew what the hell was going to come out of Jerry Lewis's mouth. What the hell? That's right. What do I need to rehearse for? Whatever you throw at me, Dean Martin, and those martinis. Never, ever a drop of alcohol in a single one of them.
Nope, that's true. That's true.
Dean was a teetotal, so he was sharp as a tack. And it's what made the show fun and sexy. And again, look, that show was so sexy. And Dean is flirting. Dean, who was married for 10,000 years to the same woman and had 1,500
11 kids, right? 11 kids. Like he was the homebody family man, the exact opposite of that guy that he was playing. In a lot of movies, he played that guy in a lot of movies too. But those shows were sexy and funny, and you can't do you can't smoke, drink, or say the kind of things that that those guys say to girls on TV anymore at all. It's so great,
but that's okay. It's all on YouTube. It's all on YouTube. What do you got next?
Real quickly, the HBO series CB Strike, in the second season, CB Strike Lethal White. For those who don't know, these are this series is based on the books by Robert Galbraith. Now, Robert Galbraith is a very interesting author. We know Robert Galbraith by his other name, which is J.K. Rowling. Mm-hmm. Or rather, J.K. Rowling writes under the pseudonym Robert Galbraith. Mm-hmm. That's how this works. So anyway, these are based on the Strike novels. And, J.K. Rowling very clearly understood that after she had written Harry Potter, the name J.K. Rowling could never be associated with any other book series, and that she would probably never outdo that. So she's kind of dialed it back. These are fine, these novels. I read one, haven't read the other, but it's very, very, this is just straight up PI stuff. Holiday Granger is absolutely great in this. She's really wonderful. Cormoran Strike, plays the main private detective is played by Tom Burke, who's good. Frankly, I think Holiday Granger, who plays Robin Ellicott, is the more interesting character here, even though Strike is technically the main character. I think Holiday Granger is the one who's sort of channeling J.K. Rowling herself in this. That's what I find sort of interesting. But anyway, it's straight up PI stuff. It's two PIs and the whole thing. And they're how they're working on crimes and their private lives and all that stuff. So I think it's pretty sharp. They don't try to overdo it. It's only 4 episodes in the second season. It's worth checking out if you haven't seen it before.
The books, perfectly serviceable, all that perfectly serviceable stuff. Hey, nothing magical. Nobody's flying. It's just crime. And she wanted to write as a grown up. It is a little weird to me that like back in the day, Agatha Christie did that once or twice, so she'd write under a different name, but no one knew that she was writing under that other name for years and years and years, decades. Now, you look at it based on the novels of J.K. Rowling writing as Robert Galt, and I get it. You put him out to let him have a moment in the air, and then you say, "Oh, it's me." I actually, but you liked it before you knew it was me, so now you can't hate it, and I'm like, okay, but that's that's whatever.
We got season 1 of Gangs of London, which is an AMC series. Pretty brutal, I got to be honest. I'm really kind of surprised at how violent this show is for AMC. I mean, we obviously, Sherman Augustus, a good friend of this podcast and a long-time friend of yours, his first appearance on Into the Badlands, he took a guy's head off. I always remember that. I'm like, and kicked it like a soccer ball. I still remember that. Yeah. That bridge fight where they introduced Nathaniel Moon is like, damn, that's brutal. Jeez. Wow. So AMC's kind of been drifting in this direction for a little bit, but this is kind of upping the game a little bit. So good on them. I think it's really, really impressive, but this is a brutal show. Just be prepared for that going in. Gangs of London, season 1. It's funny. They quote one of the right on the packaging here. They quote a newspaper review: Game of Thrones, but without the dragons. I think that's kind of accurate. I think that's kind of accurate.
You know what really has a sensibility of to me is the sort of classic say mid-60s, frankly through the early 90s. British gangster films, mostly films. So we things like Gangster Number One, The Craze, that Craze Brothers from the 90s, and you just crank it all the way back to the original Getaway, or Get Carter, I should say.
Get Carter, Italian Job.
Yeah, Italian Job. I mean, this is all contemporary, but it reminds me of those sort of really, really crunchy ass British gangster films, right? Like I said, right through the sort of mid 90s.
I think you're right.
Kind of stuff.
I think that's right.
Star Trek.
We'll talk about
Discovery.
Yeah, let's do it.
Season 3. I'm a bigger fan of the whole Star Trek world than you are. The thing that I do appreciate, and I can poke at all of it. A couple of those the very contemporary movies with I could poke at all of JJ's movies and all. I could poke it, but I will say this about them: at least they try to keep them all coherent within the Star Trek universe. They try to place them between this connects to that, and this is that, and this, all this kind of, they do that in these series. This one does it too. This one's cheating a little bit now because they jumped from their own time, which of course was originally that period. What was the period? It was post Enterprise.
It's like 24th century. I think
24th century. But pre, Picard and all that kind of stuff. But Pike is there now. They've leaped. 1,000 years into the future. So the series now exists, say, like post Picard even, which is kind of a cheat. Season 3 there that you have sort of explains how that all comes to be. And like I said, at least they explain their behavior and try to keep it connected to the rest of Roddenberry's universe a little bit.
I'll try to be a little bit kinder to it. I mean, I understand that, and I hate Picard. I think people know that I really hate what they did in Picard. I think it's a dumb show. And what bothers me with this a little bit is that they're all still trying to. They haven't quite figured out that everything on Star. I mean, they have to some degree, but they can't do it quite as well as Roddenberry and his writers did. They haven't quite figured out that everything on Star Trek is somewhat metaphorical of the here and now. Right?
Yeah.
That it is saying if we project our current conflicts into the future, if we project our current struggles into the future, our social problems, our family problems, our societal problems, our geopolitical problems, what does that look like? If we assume that human nature is constant, and that the things that, that break up marriages, that bring people together, that loving your kids, that, having character failings, all the things that make us human, if we just assume that all of that stuff is a constant, how does that, what kind of future does that make? That's what Roddenberry and his writers always tried to do. And I think sometimes they lose sight of that, and they think it's about the gimmicks. They think it's about the hardware and the melodrama and all of those things. And I think sometimes the human element gets a little bit lost. Pushing it 1,000 years into the future, it kind of, you're right, it's a cheat. And it takes you sort of away from the human element on some level. I mean, I am never going to, time travel is interesting if it's within a time frame that I can handle.
Oh, sure.
Star Trek's time travel, they always traveled back to, even when they weren't technically time traveling,
Yeah.
It was always relative to our day or something. They go to a planet where there are still Nazis, or where there are still 30s era gangsters, right? A piece of the action,
or just back to the 60s,
or back, or with Edith Keeler, right?
Yeah.
That, oh my goodness, we have to let her die so that
Joan Collins, played by Joan Collins.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Look, the other thing that the original Star Trek series, all of the Roddenberry, actually produced series, would often do is speak to the future by not speaking to the future. In other words, he solved problems and simply let us see them as solved in the series, so in the show. Though he didn't solve the problem on the show. So Nichelle Nichols sitting there, being the communications officer, and Zulu sitting there, being all Chinese and black, he solved those problems by simply putting them there. And so on and so forth. And then every now and again, he would speak to them directly. I'm black on the left side. He's black. He's white on the right. Sometimes he would speak to them directly, but he didn't have to always. Sometimes the thing itself, by putting the black woman in space, he told us that there will be black people in space without having to say anything about it. Discovery and some of the other series. You know what I do like about Picard? I know we have to move on, but the one thing that I like about Picard is that Picard in that series is 95 years old, and he says so.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I mean about them trying, because Picard, when Picard was roaming around on the Enterprise, he was a 50-year-old man 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Patrick Stewart is 80-something years old, and he was playing a character who was slightly older than him. So I loved that they let him be 95. In that series, and they even explain why. It's because he has that nuclear powered heart that he got when he was a kid.
And yet, William Shatner is in his 90s, and he's making movies where he has bed scenes with Gene Smart. I'm sorry,
and playing the guy in his 80s, in his 90s, playing the guy in his 80s. So I love all that stuff. I just think they should have never killed Kirk in that stupid ass movie.
I need to bring him back. I want him to play Kirk one more time.
One more time, baby.
Kirk one more time. One more time, man.
I knew that was a mistake. He wanted to do it. He
of course.
He killed him, you asshole. Don't kill the guy we love. As long as he's alive, as long as you're alive, Bill, Kirk is alive. Yeah. That's the way that should be.
Make quick mention of a couple here. We got a little kind of psychotic thriller from Shudder called Lucky. This is a Shudder original. It's kind of a time travel-y horror thing. I don't know that it really quite works. It tries to be a little bit of social commentary as well about the whole self-help scene. The whole thing kind of centers around a self-help author. But and you know, it's a little bit spooky. She's being stalked by somebody that nobody else appears to be able to see. But the I don't know, it doesn't really work. But the scares are good. That's the thing. The scares are smart. So it's a conceit that kind of, it doesn't really work on a logical sense, but viscerally they're able to make it work. And then we've got the Ultraman Ultra Galaxy series, which I lost track of Ultraman at a certain point. But anyway, this is Ultraman Ultra Galaxy, which has a couple of movies on it and the original series. I'm going to tell you something. You know what sets this apart from other Ultraman series, Tim? Yeah. Nothing. It's the same. It's absolutely the same. Nothing. It's like Power Rangers. They can have a million of these. They're all exactly the same. They're exactly the same. So anyway, that's out there now from Mill Creek, the Ultraman Ultra Galaxy movie combo and series boxed set on Blu-ray. Check it out, but it's not anything different. Yeah. It's the same thing over and over.
Oh boy! Oh boy! Oh boy! Oh boy! What is Defending Jacob with Chris Evans?
Yeah, Defending Jacob. So I had missed this. Chris Evans and Michelle Dockery, the wonderful Michelle Dockery from Downton Abbey, who's desperately trying to make a career of herself not in period costume.
Yeah. Chris Evans trying to make a career for himself not in tights.
Not in tights, exactly. So they both kind of have a common mission here, which is please don't associate us with you're trying to escape our typecasting. No, this is good. This is based on a best-selling novel, also called Defending Jacob, which is about it's a crime thing. You know, it's a Massachusetts crime thing. Directed by Morton Tildum, who makes it much better than it really has any business being. Morton Tildum, of course, was the director of the Oscar-nominated The Imitation Game. Yeah. And it's a limited series that should probably only have been a movie, to be honest. But it's good. You know, there's a crime, and Chris Evans plays the DA, and J.K. Simmons is really, really scary in a sporting part that I won't divulge. But you know, it's fine. I mean, it just doesn't transcend being a crime film. It only works because it has these great actors in it, and because Morton Tildum is a really, really good director. But otherwise, you know, it's a limited series crime story. Nothing earth shaking. Season 3 of Bordertown from Kino Lorber. This is out there, and if you've seen seasons 1 and 2, you know exactly what to get. This is a Finnish series. Very, very gritty and tough and well acted and well put together. And they don't have a lot of money in Finland to make a series like this. So it's quite impressive. Obviously, a lot of government funding in this, but it's different. And it's nice hearing people speak Finnish because it's such an unusual language. Then the last two in television, before we kind of start to wrap up here. Charmed, the original Charmed, Blu-ray, 4th season. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of wild seeing...
I love
Rose McGowan so young.
Well, you know, Rose McGowan, who of course took over for Shannon Doherty, who was the original, you know, of the little set of the, I don't know, whatever I have in the nostalgia for that. I'm a big fan of the current Charmed that just wrapped up,
which I'm not really watching. It's does it compare well with the first?
Actually, it does. It does. You know, it sort of lives in the same space, and you know, they're doing the sort of whole diversity thing with the Latinas and the Black Witch and all this kind of stuff. But I just love that Charmed series. It's a whole lot of fun. It was one of the original girl power series. It's what it really is.
Sweet. All right. And then the very, very last one we have here is Seance, which was also a made for Shudder. This is on Blu-ray. Has a nice cast in it. I think all 4 of these actresses really do have a future. Suki Waterhouse, Madison Beatty, Ella Ray Smith, and Inanna Sarkis. They are all worth watching. They are going to show up in other series and movies, and they're going to go on to bigger and better things. It's a Girls Academy thing. We know how those things go. You know, the title tells you everything. It's called Seance, and it takes place at a Girls Academy. Okay, you can kind of figure out what goes on. You know what happens? They have a seance, and Tim, you know what happens when they have a seance?
I'm thinking it's going to go badly.
Nothing happens. It goes perfectly well. And it's like 15 minutes in, it ends, and it's over. It's great. They're like, oh, we had a great seance. Nothing happened. No ghost, no nothing happened.
That's wild.
There you go. We have just a few minutes left, and then I'm going to take over and do a little solo run through on some anime that has accumulated. We need to kind of put a dent in our anime. A lot of it has come in. There's a lot of great anime. So I'm going to I'm going to let Tim go so I don't bore him stiff with the anime stuff. But before we get to that, just a few other little things I might want to make mention of here. The Classic Flicks is finally releasing restorations of The Little Rascals. They have put Classic Flicks, FLIX. You can go to you can find out more at classicflix.com. They are remastering all the old Little Rascal stuff, and it is wonderful. It is beautiful. It is pristine. They have 2 volumes of restorations, more to come. And they're doing it. It's a lot to do. And Little Rascals has been a public domain thing forever. Yeah. And this is a very laborious effort, and it's a labor of love. And I really, really tip my hat to them. They're doing a wonderful job here. Taking all the old Hal Roach material and bringing it back in a way that may even wind up looking better than it did when it was originally released. But so many amazing talents here. Jackie Cooper, for crying out loud, when he was a little kid, he still had that expressive face. Yeah. Jackie Cooper, who of course, most of us, you and I, we grew up knowing Jackie Cooper from Superman.
Well, yeah, right? Yeah, it's running around playing Perry White. And I wonder. And I'm not going to go look because I'll just depress myself. But I wonder if all of the original gang is gone. Because I'm kind of picking them off in my head here. Some of them, in the last 10 or 15 or 20 years, Steiny. I remember when Steiny split. I don't know. Yeah, I guess they are all gone, huh?
To my understanding is that of all the generations of our gang, Little Rascals, the only surviving actor to this day is Robert Blake.
Oh, wow.
I think Robert Blake is the last because he was from that very, very last one.
Yeah.
He was the last group. And I think Robert Blake is the last one.
Yeah.
To my knowledge.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. It's just funny how those kids lasted in our lives, just as images into these people that for 50 years, my entire life.
I know.
Wow. That's wild. Yeah, that's nuts.
It's crazy, right? Maybe knock off. So we've got some 4Ks criteria. We're not going to get through all of this. We got 4Ks, Criterions, and Arrow.
Is the Snatch? Is that the original movie from 2000? Or is that the series that they knocked off?
Yeah, let's hit these 4Ks real quickly. This is the original Guy Ritchie Snatch with Brad Pitt doing that mumbling.
I love that
makes everybody laugh.
Although he was completely and totally biting Benicio del Toro from the anyway, whatever. I don't want to get
absolutely. And Benicio del Toro's in this movie. You have to wonder. It's like, do you take this personally?
Yeah.
But anyway, this is Snatch. It's got Movies Anywhere code on it. It's beautiful HDR, and it is one of Guy Ritchie's more popular movies. It is on 4K. And comes with all the loaded extras on it, producer and director commentary, deleted scenes with commentary, featurettes, storyboard comparisons, and all that fun stuff. So if you're a Guy Ritchie fan, man, that's a glorious one. Mortal Kombat.
Is that the new one?
This is the I'm sorry, but this is just really unfortunate. This is. I'm sorry. It's just I just don't know what to make of this. But yeah, this is the new Mortal Kombat, which I guess if you're a fan of the game, maybe it makes a little bit of sense. I think there are some things in it that are good. Look, Cole Young is very good in this. I don't want to take anything away from Cole Young.
Louis Tan too, for that matter. They're both pretty good. MMA but to be honest with you,
and Louis Tan is very, very good.
I did the junket for the original Mortal Kombat, which I think was like 1990 or something like that. That movie had its issues and sort of veered away from the game. This one tries to be, obviously the special effects and all that stuff in this one are huge, comparatively speaking. Came out in April, if I'm not mistaken, of 20. So, kind of when everything was kind of going sideways a little bit, but nevertheless. Yeah, Mortal Kombat.
And then this is a nice treat for people. Almost Famous, the Oscar-winning Almost Famous, in a 4K steelbook. Still a really good movie. One of Cameron Crowe's best. I still think. I mean, Jerry Maguire is awfully good too.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is a great movie. Billy Crudup is just terrific in this. You can't take anything away from this film. It really is good. Kate Hudson.
Kate Hudson, the movie star.
It is basically his autobiography. This is how he kind of, came to be Cameron Crowe. So he won an Oscar for it. It's 4K Ultra HD and digital copy on a wonderful Paramount steelbook. You're going to want to get this for sure. A couple of box sets. Well, just in a couple of minutes that we have left.
Really wacky combo there. Eddie Murphy and Christopher Walken.
Oh yeah!
What a wacky combo there. The 48 hours and the
Tim, I set this aside. So the notes that I sent you, the reason I did this, I set this aside because I wanted to highlight two of the great actors of the 80s that you and I both love. Yeah. I wanted us to have just a minute to talk about this. So Eddie Murphy, Paramount has now released as part of its Paramount Select, Paramount Presents series. Paramount Presents. They have released 48 Hours and Another 48 Hours. And these movies are separated by quite a period of time. 48 Hours was the movie that really, really established Eddie Murphy in 1982. He was coming right out of Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, still on Saturday Night Live, yeah.
And he's still on Saturday Night Live. And the question is, do you put him in a comedy? And they didn't. Walter Hill put him in an action movie, an action buddy movie. We hadn't now I want to remind everybody that before there were the Lethal Weapon movies, before there were all of these other action buddy movies, there were no action buddy movies. No. 48 Hours is the first. This was the first one. And it was basically taking the old we talked earlier about Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. It was taking the Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin dynamic and bringing it into a Walter Hill action movie with violence and James Remar and guns and the whole thing. And it worked.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it worked. Nick Nolte is crusty and grumpy, and Eddie Murphy is hilarious and smart. And it's a great premise. It's still a great movie. Walter Hill directs the hell out of this thing. James Remar is terrific in it. Eddie Murphy modulates it perfectly. Eddie Murphy's career would not have been the same without this movie.
Oh, wow.
Because he plays the drama and he plays the comedy and he plays them both beautifully. Yeah. He knows how to modulate. Yeah. It's brilliant.
Yeah. His energy level is fantastic. Nick Nolte is really great in that movie too. Roger Spottiswoode, one of the writers.
Yes, that's right.
Of 48 Hours. Another 48 Hours. Fantastic. Yeah.
Now, Another 48 Hours in 1990. How do you feel about that?
Look, doing it again is doing it again. I remember seeing the movie in 1990 and actually enjoying it on the day. Haven't seen another 48 Hours since. 48 Hours I've seen 150 times. So, I don't, perhaps that says something about it.
Yeah, I agree. Christopher Walken, I want to make mention of the collector's edition of Dead Zone from Shout Factory. David Cronenberg directed Dead Zone, in which Martin Sheen plays a guy who wants to be president. Little did we know that on television he would eventually become president.
Yeah, different kind of president, but nevertheless. Yeah.
But it's so weird and funny watching it, knowing that in hindsight. It's so weird. In any case, The Dead Zone has also become a television series, but nothing like the original adaptation of Stephen King's book by Cronenberg. I think this is an amazing movie. I think it really is one of Cronenberg's best. I think it's one of the best adaptations of Stephen King. I think it's just a perfect mix of people, and Christopher Walken should have at least been Oscar nominated for this.
Yeah, great cast.
But let me now take us then quickly to more recent Christopher Walken. Christopher Walken in Percy versus Goliath. Tim, I don't know if you saw this. I covered this on Film Week. Yeah. It's out only on DVD, not on Blu-ray. But this is kind of an amazing story. This is a Canadian story, Canadian film. Christopher Walken plays an actual figure you may have heard of, who was a farmer and he was sued by Monsanto for violating their copyright, their patents,
that whole GMO thing, man. This is a thing.
GMO thing.
Yeah.
This was an amazing story, and he fought them, and he won, and he eventually became a legislator in Canada. But it's a real, I mean, it is a real, as the title tells you, a real David versus Goliath story. This is a guy who, just because his crops were accidentally contaminated by Monsanto and one of their GMO patented yields, that they then went after him and tried to destroy him. And he said, hey, man, I can't be held responsible just because something fell off a truck or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's a really fascinating story.
Because the wind blows. Duh.
Yeah.
Because your crap is blowing over there. I should be suing you. Directed by Clark Johnson, too, who's really become a really sure hand. Of course, we know Clark as an actor, Homicide, Life on the Streets, and The Sentinel, all that kind of stuff. But Clark was just a really interesting film, and a well-made film, and good work on the part of Clark there.
So, just a couple other things just to wrap things out. We've got some box sets here that I'd like to call people's attention to from Arrow. Three box sets in particular. If you got any birthdays coming up or you want to get out in front of the holidays, Vengeance Trails, 4 classic westerns from Lucio Fulci, Maurizio Lucidi, Massimo Dell'Amo, and Antonio Margheriti. As you can tell, these are not spaghetti westerns. No, these are all spaghetti westerns, and the films are Massacre Time, My Name is Pecos, Bandidos, and God Said to Cain. It's really, really fun. These are otherwise overlooked spaghetti westerns, and it's nice that they put them into a box set so that people could, discover them as a group. They do belong in the canon for sure. Weird Wisconsin, the Bill Rebane collection. This is quite a trip. I am, of course, as everybody knows, a huge fan of exploitation films, and I was totally unaware of this. This is an independent filmmaker, Bill Rebane, who worked entirely in Wisconsin. And, he kind of was a minor actor at one point in Hollywood, and he sort of parlayed his Hollywood work into becoming this like exploitation underground low budget maven in Wisconsin. And it's quite amazing. This is a collection of all of the films that he made in Wisconsin, these low budget, genre things, and they're crappy. But they're fascinating because it's a Wisconsin film industry. It's the only one that ever existed. And they've compiled all this into this really interesting box set with tons of new interviews, a 60-page collector's booklet, some rare short films, even outtakes and whatnot. They've done an amazing archival job of putting together all of this stuff. And it is a totally and completely fascinating look at this moment. 6 films and then a documentary about Bill Rebane. Really, really worth checking out. I do highly recommend it. It's utterly fascinating. You want to do that, Sergio? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, we got time.
All those giallos, man. Because I like Sergio. There was there's a documentary from him called Sergio Martini, the Genesis of Giallo, or something like that. It came out about 10 years ago, and he's just really great because he's sort of a historian too. He made a whole lot of wonderful, including the ones in that collection there, films. But he's really sort of like a historian of the whole thing there.
Well, Sergio Martino was obviously a Giallo filmmaker, but again, yes, a Giallo scholar as well. And this is a collection, the Sergio Martino collection, which includes the films The Suspicious Death of a Minor, Your Vice is a Locked Room, and Only I Have the Key, and The Case of the Scorpion's Tail.
Yeah.
The Case of the Scorpion's Tail is kind of the one he's most famous for, I think, probably. That has a commentary on it by Ernesto Gastaldi, moderated by a filmmaker named Federico Cadeo. That is an Italian commentary. That's an Italian language commentary. Just warning you, you're gonna read it in subtitles. It's a little bit weird. It's the first time I've ever done that. I had a commentary that I had to read while watching the film. But it's very, very interesting. Case of the Scorpion's Tail is a very underrated movie. And there's also an interview on here with Sergio Martino and a bunch of other really great extras. I gotta say, I don't think Your Vice is a locked key and only I have the key is a locked room and only I have the key is a very good movie. But I love that title.
Yeah, it's killer title. Yeah.
It's a killer title. And The Suspicious Death of a Minor is also very, very good. That has an audio commentary by Troy Howarth, who wrote the book, literally the book about 50 years of Italian giallo films, which is very, very good. That does not have subtitles. And then there is also an interview with Sergio Martino on that one as well. So yeah, Sergio Martino, really interesting figure in that particular genre and in Italian cinema in general. And 3 films on the Sergio Martino collection from Arrow.
Sweet.
All right, with that, Tim, I'm going to let you go, and then I'm going to dovetail into some anime here. I don't know if you've seen lately, but their anime is even showing up on. I've been watching the Olympics, and there's like anime television commercials now.
Oh, it's fantastic!
Plugging fast food. It's ridiculous. I'm watching. I'm like, this is a fast food commercial done with anime. I don't understand. I don't need to see my French fries in anime. What the hell are you doing? So it tells you anime's gone mainstream.
It's gone mainstream. It absolutely has. My little niece. Cameron, who of course you've met, graduated from Washington University in St. Louis and design. She got a job right away. And what is she designing? Mostly book covers, but in a sort of anime style for these books it's just absolutely fantastic. So there it is.
Great.
There it is. Yeah.
Good on her. That's fantastic.
All right. To the audience, I say I'll see you next time we record. I'll let Wade finish up what he's got to do here.
And we are now going to wrap the show out with a little bit of anime coverage. We haven't talked about anime in quite some time, and a lot of it has come out. Anime comes out on a regular basis, but streaming leaves anime a little bit out in the cold, although Netflix, paying attention to certain anime properties, has done a very good job in raising the profile of some of these shows and these properties, and people now seek them out in other forms and some of the earlier versions, and so Netflix has done a service there, but most of it still kind of tends to fall between the cracks. First one that really is worth mentioning is really interesting. This is the first 3D CG animated feature film from Studio Ghibli. It's called Earwig and the Witch. This is directed by Goro Miyazaki, not Hayao, but Goro. And it's interesting. It's the first of 2 franchises that we have here that are kind of based on a certain Anglophile sensibility in anime, which a lot of people who follow anime, they understand that there's a certain Anglophile or a Europhile sensibility that shows up. A lot of stories take place in France and England and Germany, and not all anime is mecha. Not all anime is necessarily Japanese centric and Japanese culture. So Earwig and the Witch is basically a girl-centered Harry Potter story. The centers around a young English girl growing up in an orphanage, and doesn't really know that she comes from magical lineage, that her mom was a witch, and then she is taken in by this couple and adopted, and sort of learns about her legacy and her lineage, and her destiny is manifest in the process. This is part of the Studio Ghibli and deal with G Kids, and Studio Ghibli and G Kids have released a lot of stuff in tandem, and this is actually really quite good. It's a nice set, has a lot of it's a nice packaging, sleeve, has a sleeve on it, and has some extras on it, storyboards and interviews with voice talent and featurettes. It's good. Earwig and the Witch from G Kids. Also, as long as we're talking about the Anglophile sensibilities, we also have Emma, a Victorian Romance, seasons 1 and 2. This is kind of in keeping with the inspiration here is clearly the writings of the Bronte sisters. And it kind of comes also by way a little bit of Downton Abbey. Story of a maid and her romance in Victorian England. And that's really it. It's they keep the drama going season over season between the two. I'm not quite sure if a third season would necessarily be justified. But as it is, it's really kind of cool seeing anime superimposed on the world of Victorian England and the romantic life of this maid, Emma. It's all rather very, very nicely done. So that is Emma, a Victorian Romance, and that is from Nozomi. You can learn more about that from, that's part of the Right Stuff is the distributor there. Elfenlied from ADV Films is kind of creepy. This is an extension of the Jekyll and Hyde thing that shows up every once in a while in anime. We've got sort of two individuals that reside in the single girl, and how that duality manifests itself when she is sort of brought into the fold by a couple of these two cousins. It's a little creepy. It means to be creepy, but the whole dualistic aspect to it is really kind of turning Jekyll and Hyde or the Incredible Hulk or any of those other sort of dualistic concepts. It's really turning it up to 11. Takes it in a whole new different direction. It's quite interesting. Then we have a bunch here from Sentai that are worth talking about. Sentai has just brought out a whole bunch of cool new stuff. Killing Bites, the complete collection, is a really good one to talk about. This, like most of them, is based on a manga. And it's in the werewolf vein. It's humans who can transform into beasts or who live kind of a dualistic life, part beast, part human. This is a big thing in Asian mythology. It kind of finds its home a lot in anime. Humans who are kind of, part something and part something else. And here they are called brutes, and they're kind of like Dr. Moreau figures. They have human brains and then beast body parts. In any case, the mythology here is a little bit convoluted and takes some getting used to, but it certainly does have its moments. Baki is a really, really interesting show. This is one of many anime series about Baki. Baki is son of ogre. It's kind of a fierce and ambitious kind of underground mixed martial arts fighter, and that's the world that this takes place in. Netflix has sort of popularized this, but there have been a number of these series over the last 20 years or so. This one is brand new, and this is based on the Most Evil Death Row Convicts manga storyline. That's the one that sort of fuels this. There's a number of manga storylines around Baki, and the Most Evil Death Row Convicts is the story arc that this one is based around. It's 26 episodes, 3 discs, and all of these, by the way, are on Blu-ray. That is also from the Sentai Library. It's pretty brutal animation, kind of a shallow story. If you follow the Baki thing, it really sort of is a little bit repetitive, but people watch it basically for the action, and that's what it is. Karakuri Circus, the complete collection, again, based on a manga. And this one is it's a sort of unusual world that this lives in. I guess it's a thing to perhaps in Japan to want to become a puppeteer, but that's what this is sort of about. This is about a boy who becomes very, very wealthy, and his aspiration is to become a puppeteer. And there are some others here, some other figures. One of them is kind of has sort of a strange kind of neurodiverse affliction, we could say. I'll sort of leave it at that. And they all have to sort of band together to fight this strange breed of like they're not mecha, they're like sort of robots. In any case, it's the emphasis on the circus part of Karakuri. It is a peculiar group of heroes with peculiar aims and very unusual adversaries. And you were really watching this just kind of for the extreme of it. It is interesting, but it really is kind of an acquired taste. Sword Guy is quite beautifully drawn, very, very nice. Also, again, based on manga originally. This was from, I think, about 2016. So this is about 5 years old. And it's sort of as the title would suggest, it is swordplay stuff, but it's like it's updated modern day swordplay stuff, and it's all about a a hero who, has to takes this sword, this incredibly remarkable sword, and it becomes a prosthetic limb, and he then becomes, a sort of mythical hero in the usual Joseph Campbell hero's journey vein. But nonetheless, Sword Guy, the animation, is as extreme as it sounds. It is actually really, really beautifully animated, very nicely drawn. Not quite so nicely drawn, but still engaging on a certain level, is Dororo. This is the complete collection of Dororo, which began as a 2007 film based on a 1960s era manga. And it's this is a kind of an unusual story. It's not the most interesting if you aren't deeply invested in sort of feudal mythology. It has a lot of it requires, I think, a little bit of you need to be pretty deep into anime of this type. Anything that sort of develops these feudal mythologies and all of their various subplots and eclectic characters. You sort of have to hit the ground running here. It's not the most accessible, but if you can get into it, Dororo, the complete collection, is fairly engaging. Mysterious Girlfriend X. What can I say about this? This is for people who like the whole school thing, which is very, very much a part of anime. We talk about it all the time. The drama that takes place in school. Sometimes it's supernatural. Sometimes it's centered around sports. Sometimes it's, very, very melodramatic. In this case, this is just a straight up relationship narrative. And, these with a few twisted aspects to it that you aren't exactly kid unfriendly, but there's humor here that is probably needs a little vetting first. But nonetheless, as far as the genre goes, it is relatively inoffensive. To Love Ru Darkness is the third season of or the third installment of the long running and very, very popular To Love Ru story, and this has been around fair amount of time. The original series goes all the way back to, gosh, what is it? The early 2000s, I guess. So if the story takes place in kind of a fictional city, and it's about, more of these the romantic travails of these kids, and then suddenly you get some aliens injected into the story, and it becomes very supernatural. Again, very, very peculiar, very particular kind of anime storytelling. Stick with it if that is your thing. Laid Backers didn't really get with this. I know a lot of people really, really enjoy this. It's not my speed, but it is for some people. This was. This is fairly recent, and it takes place in in modern Japan, and it's kind of a family drama, and it all centered around the inheritance of a candy store, and then it dovetails into a supernatural family drama in a weird way, because there's a defective reincarnation element to the story. And it never really takes flight. I think it tries to be a little too far out, and a little kind of the humor doesn't quite gel. But again, it has a following, and I'm not necessarily part of that following. The fetishistic aspect of anime is on full display in Queen's Blade. Queen's Blade was, I think, also an inspiration for a video game at one point. But it has become, nonetheless, a very huge franchise in a lot of ways, and is very, very popular. And it's all based around this tournament, which is called the Queen's Blade, which happens every 4 years, like the Olympics. that sort of bestows the title of decides who's going to be queen in this particular area, this continent, this empire. And it gets a little bit Hunger Games-ish at a certain point, but it's also really, in terms of the animation, it's very much centered around fetishistic imagery that is has a long-standing presence in Japan and Japanese culture generally. Not for kids, but maybe for certain people. The Fruit of Grisaya, along with the Labyrinth of Grisaya and the Eden of Grisaya. These are three different series that are all part of an overarching saga that began with the Fruit of Grisaya, which is kind of, it's not quite fetishistic, but it is definitely rooted in we could call it fetishistic adjacent, I guess, in the current vernacular. There have been video games based on this as well. But the story here very much follows what a lot of people have enjoyed in the games, and it's primarily sort of head play and melodrama, and this has had a presence on television for quite some time. So if Grisaya is your thing, jump into that. I want to get down here to these last two that we're going to touch on before I call it quits here. Mayu is really, really cool. And this was not based on a manga. This is based on kind of a graphic novel series originally. Let's not confuse that with manga. This is a step up from manga. Really, really interesting artwork originally in the graphic novel, which they translate beautifully into this show. This is also Sentai Blu-ray, and I've only looked a little bit at some of the online stuff for the original graphic novel, but it's beautiful artwork, and the show definitely does it justice. The story, this takes place in a mythical fantasy world where humans and demons are forever at war, and they're obviously this is following kind of a Lord of the Rings paradigm. But the direction that it goes is very unexpected. If you're accustomed to the traditional Western hero's journey and mythical collision of, beasts and humans, it usually goes in a particular direction. This one doesn't. And it takes some goes in unusual directions, and has something very interesting to say about humanity and what holds humanity together, and what actually causes war. These kinds of narratives have grown out of post-war Japan in a way very much as the Godzilla films do, very much out of a paranoia about war and the consequences of war. Japan's loss of World War II was very, very psychically devastating to a certain generation, and so that is what sort of fuels a lot of the different philosophical approach here. But it's really quite wonderful. Mayu, absolutely worth checking out. Complete collection from Sentai. And then lastly, I want to talk about Knights of Sidonia. This is the complete series collection, and it is 5 discs, 24 episodes. Really, really very, very challenging. This is it fits firmly in both the mecha genre of anime, the cyberpunk futuristic mecha genre that includes everything from Robotech to even to something like Transformers. And at the same time, it's also very much in the same vein as things like Star Blazers and Space Cruiser Yamato, which is sort of Star Wars inspired, and some of it even predates Star Wars significantly. So it is intergalactic. It is mecha. It is very, very challenging and daring. And it has a lot of amazing animation, and it's really incredible designs. Sidonia, of course, is the starship here, and it's this all takes place in the year 3394. Which is 1,000 years after the Earth was destroyed by this alien race that they are still fighting and still trying to overcome. And everything that takes place here is sort of like a fascinating commentary on all of the the paranoia of our day. What will we allow science to do? How deep will we allow our obsession with progress to go before we finally realize that there are ethical questions here that we probably that we should make a part of the process, that we shouldn't just sort of go for it all the time and, whatever is possible. Really very, very interesting. And again, the design here is just through the roof. It's really, really impressive. A little bit of Battlestar Galactica, a little bit of Star Wars, a lot of things like Space Cruiser Yamato / Star Blazers, and pretty much every mecha series that has ever emerged from Japanese anime finds inspiration. It is somehow inspires designs here. It is first rate. Knights of Sidonia, the complete series collection from Sentai via distributor section 23. We'll call it there, and we will be back. Tim and I will be back in probably about 2 weeks, sometime in the middle of August. And we hope you continue to have a good and safe time as things continue to be very, very unstable in the country. But wherever you live, whether or not there are surges, we hope you are taking every precaution. Stay safe, keep your loved ones safe, and hang in there. We're all going to get through this, and life will get back to normal. See you soon.